Hello, good morning. Can you hear me? Hello. Okay. So we do this Manjushri prayer. Lama Dangambo Jambo Yang Janza Lo Kangi London Dimyen Tinda Nidare Nanda Rosa Jinyen Dengun Jijin Zijir Nidjin Dugar Lekbam Zen Konda Zibe Zenrare Mare Mendon Donga Jizere Donzo Genla Pujin Darze Yenla Nduje Yande Zondu Daren Jendo Nyemo Nyelon Leje Jadu Ndoze Mare Menze Donga Nyugo Jinyen Jenze Ralde Nam Denen Daji Saje Tarzen Yenden Lenzo Jaze Tuve Kuchadan Jat Chunyen Jende Dale Menze Jambe Yonla Ende Marabazanande 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 Arapazana Deo Marapazana 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 Deo Omara Bazana de 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 Zeden Jeje Chenra Vezerenje Dale de Mo Membarosa Kodan Denje Shonlo Dobai Lodre Bobe Nawan Zandu So and the Zonjan Don Jingo, the Donjingo Janze Janda, Kajan Zonda Majeva. Palo Jinji Jinja Beja Jindu Jima Meva Languera Dundede, Mozongo Bajimbe Bonen Chanza Jinja Zuchu, Shivan Zera Donjedu Tuji Jesu Zimbaranze Duzo, Kongishasan. Yusar Zimbe Nonda Jin, Zimbe Zive Zendum Barvendu Kunmi Gindu Zijuru, Tujidama Kune Jiren Jiden Zunji Konjabe. Tuombe Mongarbe Jebe Dirin Dale Yenzurajon, Ojenzo Lembe Mendum Bonzere, Jeve Namdu Ranjin Lenjendo, Tenzo Beje, Denjon Barbe, Pema Junen Dale Yenzurajon, Gumbolo Dwarian Devadan, Domain Yencholan Jinda, Jijun Janam Yimpaozo, Zamlin Jinjo Nanje Dae Shon. The Garan Jin Bengo, and then Gunjunga Vishazardo, Nimbi, Bebe Nanjaraba. Jimmy Vezir Jenda Jean, Ridon Jambajana Jinale, Gombilon Levo Pente Jedul, Dojans and Jansen Wanjur. Mipam Jambi Yanji Dae Jean, Gongada Ribalovada, Dojit and Jemenga no Lazo, Lavazada, Ungurishin Lambe. Muju Tinchen Lamin Da Yishon Namo Guru Chinyin Pumen Dunji Yishi Sala Punjaran Chun Duji Chimpetrin Duji Kala Pamen Tanawa Palden Lamin Shajin Da Yishon Yende Sanje Kunda Nyamnaya Kadin Sanje Kunle Labi Gwen Savi Lamin Shala Soande Pason Duji Chowa Shinji Lo Konda Chijur Dongi Jidena Deshe Lamar Jirba Kansuta Tende Dambi Chujin Bebe Sembara deba dada ndirsheshe namoryan tamba lai kedan lo danu jenge ndubum dada me kenam dan dua kunji danam jizambar tamje ke do sosrate gyurchi majur dua namka danyam besim jen tamje namdul tenji dewa lana meba yando barzo bi sanji chinko hwarim do chela chine jankwe prasha teyi chedo Zechimbo Shivalha, Teni Jidzebe, Chanju Sembi Chobala Juba, Tenit Sushindo Sene, Nyamsolawar Gyo Nyambo, Samba Shanju Chodo Tuji Badanchi the Sense Hall. So, before we begin the actual teaching, to have a right intention or motivations by generating this altruistic or bodhicitta, thinking start from one's dearest and how we wish to support and overcome and help to one's dearest, and similar like that sense to spread it out towards all sentient beings to free them from cyclic existence and its cause, and then to lead them to complete enlightenment. For that purpose, I'm going to listening this Mahayana scripture, which is composed by Shantideva, way of Bodhisattva's life, and then whatever one understand, one will going to implement with that kind of intention. Listen this teaching, and then beside this having right motivations, and we need to also have a right way of listening for the conduct, uh, which is kind of like a listen carefully with the kind of like a at being a at paying attention, uh, and then the listen carefully in an excellent way, and then try to implant it, or try to hold it. Normally I'm saying, so I think better word, try to implant it. With that preparations, and then now the actual Dharma teaching, which is here, this way of Bodhisattva's life, which has 10 chapters with the 4 main theme. First theme, which is how to, why and how to generate and receive Bodhisattva's vow within oneself, and which is introduced by first 3 chapters. And then the second theme, which is how to maintain that what we already generated or received the vow of Bodhisattva's vow without transgressions, as well as once if mistakenly transgressed it, how to repair it with that all complete guidance, which is introduced by this second theme, which is 4th, 5th, and 6th chapter. And then the third theme is to further how one can improve or develop this bodhicitta, which is shown by this, introduced by this 7th, 8th, and 9th chapter. And then the last theme is how to dedicate and make aspirations properly which is guided by the last chapter, which is 10. That's how these are the kind of like a main, what do you call a subject that which we are studying in this way of Bodhisattva's life. And then among this fourth theme with the 10th chapter, we completed until now the sixth chapter with the true theme, the first true theme. And today we are here in the seventh chapter with the third theme, how one can further improvement or develop this bodhisattva. And then in order to further improvement or develop this bodhisattva, and what it is required is diligence and meditations and wisdom. And these three things are required in order to, how to say, the improve one's bodhisattva. Then among these three, that first we are studying how one should have a diligence towards its path, that either we call bodhicitta or Mahayana spiritual path. It's same. So how one can develop the one's own Mahayana spiritual or the bodhicitta. And then to that, first requirement is diligence. We need to have a diligence in order to develop or improve this. And then from this page, kind of like 162, the diligence chapter begins. And within that, it is we are completed until this 10th stanza. Until this 10th stanza, what we have gone already or the studied already is that the briefly reason that why one's need diligence with this first stanza. And then the second stanza is the recognize or identified the entity of diligence, what diligence really means. So that's we discussed a lot before. So maybe I hope you understand this. What does it mean here, the diligence? In English word diligence, I think not necessarily only goes after kind of like a optimistic or positive, but I think we normally use the person whoever putting so much effort to success their business or success their farming or success their getting job or success in a kind of like they cheat on others. These are all maybe considering as a diligence. But here in this case, according to the Buddhist point of view, and particularly here this Shantideva's point of view of writing this way of Bodhisattva's life, here when we say diligence, this all can be erased or eliminate. This diligence doesn't go any diligence here doesn't relate it anything with those kind of effort. It's only refers to those like the positive, having interest in positive activities or the meritorious activity in short. So the interest or enthusiastic or kind of like a keen interest in meritorious activity, it's refers here diligence. That's so important to understand. Otherwise, then it can be misguided. So only to that refers this, the diligence here means. And then within this second stanza, also introducing the second stanza from second line to the third stanza, both this 3 line and 1 stanza, introducing the contraries, the diligence, its contraries, which are the 3 types of laziness, which we discussed before: the laziness of procrastination, the laziness of clinging to unwholesome actions, and then the laziness of discouraging oneself. These are the 3 things. It is contrary of diligent, that in short, it's called lazy. And opposite of diligence is lazy. Opposite of lazy is diligent. And then these 3 types of diligence, and then also that next stanza, the third stanza, introduced it, that what are the reason behind that we are generating these 3 types of laziness, or what are the causes exactly producing these 3 types of laziness as a result. And then they introducing this kind of like a test for idle pleasure, and the craving for repose and sleep, and no qualms or dejections about the sorrow of samsara. The laziness indeed, it's born from this. And then after introducing that the what's the that why we need diligence, and what's the entity of diligence, and then what is the contrary of diligence, and those contrary, which is laziness, those 3 types of laziness, from where it born, or from where it grow, or from where it diligent generates. It's after all introducing it. Then from this stanza 4th, and then Shantideva mainly providing all this method or skills, or we can say the antidote, that how the remedy or antidote, how to kind of like lay it low and eventually eliminate those 3 types of contraries of diligence. So the diligence will going that we will going to have a complete 100% diligence when one able to lay it low or eliminate completely those 3 contraries of diligence, which is 3 types of laziness. And removing these 3 types of contraries, what it remaining, it's diligent. So from this stanza 4th, Shantideva introducing, and then one by one, how to lay it low, actually eliminate, and also lay it low, those 3 types of contraries of diligence. And then here within from this stanza 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8, 9, 10, until here, we Shantideva kind of like a guided, provided many different skills of thinking, that the using this example or the metaphor, the fishes and the fish and what do you call it? That one. Fish and what do you call it? That net, right? Net. Fish and net example or net metaphor. Kind of like we are, whether we are able to realize at the moment or not, regardless, we are being like a fish, and then this net is already, how to say, throw it on us. So whether whether we are able to realize or not, it is just like that. So thinking or contemplating upon its example and the meaning, and then letting us lay it low or remove the among the three types of laziness. The first one, the laziness of procrastinations. So laziness or procrastinations, how one can uh, lay it low or the reduce and eventually eliminate it by, in very brief short, by contemplating upon uncertainty. Then how to meditate upon uncertainty. So sometimes when we say accept uncertainty or uncertainty, then uh, kind of like it becomes very general informations. And then now Shantideva providing from this front stanza fourth to all the way until the stanza mm 14th, 4 to 14th, almost 11 stanzas. It is introducing little detail how to contemplate upon uncertainty. So the uncertaintiness of the change or and then death, that using this metaphor as a fish and net, and then similar like that, using that metaphors and contemplating upon it, then reducing or eliminate, try to eliminating this the laziness or procrastinations. Likewise, the buffalo and what do you call it, the hunter or the butcher, the buffalo and butcher metaphor, uh, contemplating upon it to eliminate this laziness or procrastinations. And then as well as the kind of like a what to say, that death will swoop on you so swiftly, gathered merit till that moment comes. No, sorry. All the parts of the fleet are blocked. That which is in Tibetan, which we used to say, "Drumbo dan lamgu kipe," the metaphor of guest and the enemy who waited to uh, kind of like a kill or uh, rob that guest. And this, with this metaphor, and try to understand this our life, it's just like that. And then try to uh, avoiding the laziness or procrastinations. And then later the seventh stanza, that contemplating upon the certaintiness of death, and then procrastinating, laziness of procrastinating. And then the eighth stanza is that certaintiness of death itself, when it comes, it is really uncertain. By thinking upon that and then trying to eliminating the laziness or procrastination. Uh, and then when that death happens to the this is all talking about to the normal beings who are not preparing anything, just spending their whole life in a normal mundane way, like kind of like a there's so many things that in a mundane we can do, we can act, but if we can summarize that into those four activity or those eight worldly concerns. This is something that uh, the being, or the, particularly the human being in this world, most of us only cherishing, or this is what only we concerns the meaning of life, our meaning of life, which is kind of like a not really truth actually. But however, and this is what we feel, the meaning of our life is to cherishing after those either eight worldly concern or those four the mundane activities that normally every time I'm saying that the uh, defeat or taming try to taming the enemies or dislike persons, and then uh, either we engage into activities try to protect one's family, spouse, or son, daughter, or relatives, and so on, or we engage into the business. So business, this each category has so many ways of engaging actually. So business itself, there's so many hundreds of thousands of way to engage into business. And likewise farming, and in farming also like that. So either these four normally that the normal human beings are spending their life engaging into either of these four activities, or on the other hand we may can say cherishing after those eight worldly concerns, that looking pleasant within both physical and mental, and then looking gain, and then uh, what do you call that mm, praise, looking praise, and then looking fame. So that on the other hand, these are the some sort of like a consider as of eight worldly concerns that where normally human beings spend their whole life. And we also think these either these four or these eight are the our purpose of life. Many human beings who doesn't have any idea about their religion, and especially those spiritual path that kind of like which has all these instructions about meditating upon all these four thoughts and four immeasurable and bodhicitta, six prajna paramita. That person who doesn't have any of this idea, then highly likely they just think that their purpose of life is to have all those achievement, that get rid of or the taming my enemy or my disliked person is my purpose of life, or kind of like protecting my family and have a good family, protect my family, support my family, is that this is it my purpose of life, or doing business, or doing farming, or on the other hand, cherishing after those eight worldly concerns that, as I just mentioned, pleasant, gain, press, and fame. And these four things we cherishing after, and then likewise opposite these four things, unpleasant, we cherish to eliminate, and then lost, we cherish to eliminate, and then kind of like a humiliation, opposite of praise is humiliation. So the humiliations we cherishing uh, the the after humiliation, and the humiliations we cherishing after humiliations to get eliminate, and then likewise bad reputations. So bad reputations is also like that, we cherishing after bad reputations to get rid of from one's way. So these are the eight concern considered as the eight worldly concerns. So the normal human beings who spending most of their life or whole their life thinking this is purpose of my life, and then just spending their life in this way, and those beings are mainly here talking about this is just like this. And then those type of persons when they um, when death happens to them, then when death happens to them, then this is what it is happening for sure, kind of like a here from this stanza 9 and stanza 10, these are describing You will look upon the face of your hopeless friends, their tear-stained cheeks, their red and swollen eyes, for such will be the depth of their distress. And then you will see the heralds of the deadly Lord. This kind of experience. So first Shantideva introducing um, the the uncertaintiness in general, that in particularly the death, the uncertaintiness of death could become anytime within oneself. Therefore, one should not waste our time. And then particularly, and then person who are just spending in this normal way, that as I mentioned above earlier, uh, then those type of being, when that death occurs to them, and then how they will going to deal with their death procedure is this way. This is something unavoidable if one kind of like a completely hold their life only spending into those mundane chores. Then this kind of experience almost like a must undergo. There's no other way that one can skip this kind of experience. Uh, and then also the memory of former sins will torture you. The screamed and din of hell break on your ears. With, uh, with very terror you will fall yourself. What you will do in such uh, delirium, delir- delirium, yes, delirium, when this delirium happens, and then what one really can do. So these kind of things definitely going to happen to those type of persons. um, and this is what Shantideva introducing, that the if someone say, okay, even though death happens to me, so what, I will kind of like deal with it, or I will wait, I will see. And this is something that Shantideva introducing before. So right now we have no idea about any of this experience, because right now we are alive and we think, oh, even though those informations when someone's given, we may think, is that really going to happen? I don't think so. I may able to accept death easily. We may think that. So death is normal. This is part of our life. That's okay. When I die, it's die. And the very strange thing is that I also heard from some of my um, friend. I don't know whether it is truth or not. If it is truth, it is something I don't know what to say now to those type of person who have that kind of mental set. That one of my friend told me, they nowadays this young generations, that boys and girls, and then here it he related with his own kind of like a experience that he encountered with the one woman, and who is the lady, young lady, okay, young lady who wearing shorts, very kind of like a not covering all the her kind of like a legs, showing all the legs and everything, even in a cold weather. And then he suggested her, don't you feel cold, why you don't just cover? And then she just said, oh, I just want to show this. And this is something like, I don't know what you call it, according to the nowadays modern society or whatsoever. She answered him. And then he suggested, and further he said, if you do this, when you get little old, then you may will going to have a very difficult, and especially that you won't be able to control your urethral, right? Urethral, huh? Bladder, yeah. You will lose your this uh, kind of like a bladder, use control of the lose control of bladder, then you may fall all your urethals. like that kind of difficulties you may need to face if you don't care at this from now, that cover and keep warm your legs. And then very strange answer she respond back. And then what she said was to him is, when I get old, even I lose my control of bladder or urethral or whatsoever I face difficulties, illness by this, I am ready to accept it. Right now, I am young, so let me enjoy. Don't tell me this. You see now. So now that type of person who have that kind of mental set. Now what to say? Even describing the consequences of misbehaving, and they're still saying, I don't care. Oh, let me enjoy. Right now I am young. So when I get old, oh yeah, old means although that person naturally I will get all these difficulties. So this getting this losing control of bland, bladder or urethral, it's okay. I will deal with it. She's saying that in a very confident way, you know. You see, this is exactly, I'm just using this and as an example that right now, when that like people like Shanti, they were here introducing this stanza 9 and 10. These informations at the moment may be becoming to us like that. Oh, death is part of our life. I will deal with it when it comes. So right now, let me enjoy. Right now, let me engage into mundane activities. Many various way of engaging into mundane activities, but somehow I told you, if we summarize or contain either this 4 activity or 8 worldly concerns, there's nothing more we can do more than that. We may think we have so many ways to do engage into mundane activities, but if we summarize, there's nothing much we have a choice rather than engaging into any of those 4 or 8s. So you see, right now, what I'm really saying is that when the when we heard this at the moment, we may not able to imagine properly or sense properly what this information is giving. Just like that woman, that my friend, when he suggested her to cover her leg and keep warm, better for your future, and then she's responding in a very confident way that, oh, future, forget it. Let me live right now, right? Let me live right now and let me do whatever I want to do at the moment. Actually, that is also, you know, in a one hand, this is also showing very clear that she is actually practicing the impermanent. She is actually practicing the uncertainty, but the way she is practicing uncertainty is kind of like a very strange way. Huh? Unwisely, yes. Unwisely, she is, yes. That mindset itself, she is practicing, she is accepting uncertainty. She is practicing uncertainty because she think, right? Because she think, when I get old, I cannot kind of like uh, the wear all those clothes. So this is the moment. I should not waste. I should not lose this moment. Right? Exactly. But this is, as I said earlier, she is using this uncertainties practice in an unwise way. If she used this uncertaintiness practice in a wise way, and then That is exactly uncertainty's practice itself. You see, now it is normally that when we talk about accept uncertainty, people are a little bit hesitating and a little bit feeling uncomfortable. Oh, that means accept uncertainty means kind of like a take some hardship. It's not. We are accepting uncertainty in our day-to-day life. Even to do business, we need to practice uncertainty. Even to have a raised family and have a couple, have a husband, wife, we we need practice uncertainty. Yes, this accepting uncertainty is goes anywhere. Even to do the farm, you need to practice uncertainty. Without practicing uncertainty, you cannot have a good farm. You need to look all this worry like, oh, this in a September, October, then the weather will going to change. Then they will not going to have a much warm. Then all this my corn and potatoes, tomatoes, whatsoever, it will not going to grow because of the weather. There's a no warmness in the weather like that. This is it. Practicing uncertainty actually. It is needed. Mm. Anyhow, so the point here, this information may sounds to us at the moment like the way she behaved, right? The way she thinks. So mainly this all Dharma practice are through their example, through these type of examples, and then look into oneself. That's the main purpose, main goal of studying spiritual path. Okay, so using all those past history or present those examples and to see the clear mirror. Okay, it is not just to blame others. Oh, she is silly, he is unwise. Not like that. And then look at them and then use them as your mirror. And then try to look yourself on them because they are mirror. Am I doing like this or not? If oneself is doing like this, then kind of like a find out the solution. Is there anything I can do it? Is there anything that I should consider? This is all purpose. This example history is to just to use as a mirror, not to use as a kind of like a criticize others. And if we do, then our this spiritual journey is uh, not going towards its directions. And but to study, and we must use those examples and histories to able to see clear without talking about these things. And these things sometimes we feel like we judging somebody's, but actually we are not judging. We are trying to judging ourselves by looking those things, looking these kind of histories in the past and in the present whatsoever. Anyway, so the best method or the skills or antidote or remedy whatsoever we call to eliminate the laziness or procrastination, it's contemplating or practicing uncertainty. This is the best. As I mentioned earlier, we do practice this. Even to live a worldly life, even to live in a mundane way, we needed this practice. We needed this intelligent, able to see the how things change. If we fail to see how things change, then spiritual is far. Even we won't be able to success our worldly life. Even we won't be able to success our mundane life. Two, it is needed the kind of like a, to remove this kind of the laziness or procrastinations. This is the best method, yes. But now actually these are something that intellectual now we understood a little bit, but now more important is that what we need to do is to contemplate and meditate upon these meanings. So you can just open this book and then read it in a very careful, and then close your eye and then imagine this all meaning within oneself. That first stanza, then the fourth stanza's meaning, and fifth stanza meaning, sixth stanza meaning, seventh stanza, and eighth stanza, and then 9 and 10. These are not happened yet. And if the normal people's the procedure of dying is like this, whether am I really able to deal with it or not, that we can also a little bit imagine through these instructions. And then now from here, Shantideva talks about the future, what will going to be. Future means next life. Actually, this 9 and 10th, this is also our future. This is describing our future. We didn't face this yet. We didn't experience this 9 and 10th stanza yet. And this 9 and 10th stanza's meaning, we will going to experience if one doesn't have the spiritual practice properly, then this experience will definitely going to have it within oneself. This is actually also the future, but it is within our life. That's why it is all considered as a present. And then stanza 11 and 12, 13, these three stanza talks about kind of like a what do you call future life or the next life, which is the let me read this first in English. Stanza 11. If like a living fish that twists and writhes, you are so terrified while still alive. What need to speak of pain unbearable in a house created by past evil deeds? So this is in Tibetan. I forgot to read this first in Tibetan. Okay, sorry. Let me read this first in Tibetan here. Chuni nyasun jewa tai cedr jigdan denjur na dikje nyawa mizebi dungal namni mechi gwe chuzen jini rekpa na shunsha chen la rabtsawi nyalwa yini leshene chichir dedar dewar nes. Chunmen debu deba na sere chen la nwe mangshin. Chiwe sungshin landrawa kihu dungal dagi choms. So these three stanzas talking about that if the persons spend whole their life in a mundane, as I mentioned earlier, then how their death experience will going to be introduced by this 9 and 10th stanza, and then after death and what their experience will going to be, and then this describing all this from this three stanza. That the 11th stanza, the way they translated is like this, as I read earlier. If like a living fish that twists and writhes, you are so terrified while still living, alive. What need to speak of pain unbearable in hells created by past evil deeds? How can you remain at ease like this when you have done the deeds that leads to contact on your tender baby flesh of boiling liquids in the hell of extreme heat. So tasty and thin skinned, you want results without endeavor. Many are the troubles now in store for you. Uh, though in the grip of death, you are behaving like a god, and suffering, alas, will beat you down. So, this, um, what does it, these three stanzas mean? Is that 11 stanza? Mm, when we really contemplate that until now, all the above, until this 10 stanza, that whatever the uh, kind of like a difficulties that we mentioned, uh, within this life, actually, to when we, even when we consider or think about these kind of difficulties, that it might generates within oneself some sort of like a fearness, just like this fish, that living fish that twists and writhes. This is example, the living fish that twists and writhes. When those living fish from the water, it take out from the water, then when we put on the sand, the very hot weather sunset, sand, then how this fish are kind of like unable to bear that sands, and then they how they twist and writhes. And similar like that way, this uh, even this worldly, right now, this worldly, all these worldly difficulties, they mentioned all above, as well as any kind of other difficulties we can include, such as difficulties of losing family member, such as the difficulties of losing, I don't know what to say, losing one's spouse, and such as the difficulties about losing a job and losing friends and losing. Okay, now losing gain, losing pleasant, right? Losing pleasant. Even at that time, that we are fail to bear. This is compare with the others difficulties, such as the hell beings, what kind of difficulties they are undergoing. It is kind of like a nothing compared with their difficulties. But yet, that when we experience this our own, this small compared with those worldly difficulties, as I mentioned earlier, losing all this, and then also the death procedures, whatever Shantideva described it all above as well. So when any of these kind of difficulties occurs within oneself, we are kind of like a behaving, or we are becoming like those living fish that twist and writhe, so unable to accept or bear, right? uh, if that the case, and what Shantideva was saying, if that the case, what need to speak of pain which is unbearable in a health created by past evil deeds, our own past evil deeds. Now, this is something, this first line is example, and then second is you are so terrified while still alive. So this is all talking about the worldly difficulties. Worldly difficulties, such as I have mentioned above, as well as Shantideva introduced the procedure of death and uncertainty and everything until now, until this 10th stanza. And on the side note, I said losing family member, losing spouse, losing friend, losing job, losing reputation, losing fame, losing praise, losing pleasant, losing gain. Oh, and then also wounded, disease, right? There are so many difficulties. When we, how to say, when we face those even mundane, um, compare with those hell difficulties, which is very tiny difficulties. But when it occurs to oneself, we are becoming unbearable, those difficulties. Just like we are being like that type of fish, the fish who remove from water and put it on the hot sanded. We're just being like this, unbearable, moving here, thinking what to do, and so nervous. If that the case, what Shandita was saying, if that the case, then uh, right now, towards those activity which we are engaging into, which is uh, the non-virtuous actions, which lead us towards hell, and then to undergo the suffering or the grief or the difficulties that the what you call a tremendously, right, unbearable pain. That's how they described. And then in hells created by past evil deeds. So to understand that, what Shantideva was really trying to saying is that if oneself just spent whole life only in a mundane way, then this is what our future life's going to be. And if you even unable to bear this kind of worldly pain, then forget about able to bear those difficulties which one will going to be experienced in a future life if one spend whole life in this way. So think about that, and then to eliminate the laziness of procrastinating to engage into generating bodhicitta and meditating upon four immeasurable, and try to implement all these six prajna paramitas such as generosity, morality, patience, diligence, meditation, and wisdom. So on one hand, this is what it is talking about, okay? He's letting us contemplate on this and then to remove this sense of procrastination on our spiritual path, which means, just mentioned earlier, practicing those is something like the, what do you call it, four immeasurable and six prajna paramita and uh, bodhicitta. These are the something we call spiritual path and a Mahayana spiritual path. So good thing in a Mahayana spiritual path, it is like uh, this Buddhist teaching, when it's getting higher and higher, it becomes more accessible. Accessible. What, how to say? Accessible. Yes, access. There's an access for each and every. So Buddhist teaching are like that. The teaching, the practice, when it goes higher and higher, it is becomes more open and more accessible. Which means that for instance, the kind of like a Theravadan spiritual path, it is not really accessible for everyone. It is very limited audience. And then when it goes to the higher little bit, like Mahayana spiritual path, then it is more open, more accessible. Even all the lay can practice 100%. And then now even go to the higher, like a Vajrayana path, then even more open. It is much more accessible than the Mahayana spiritual path. Anyway, so here what we are talking about is this Mahayana spiritual path. So this Mahayana spiritual path, it is very open and accessible to everyone, regardless of gender, regardless of color, regardless of young and old, poor and rich, regardless of monk or lay. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. When even we look to the histories, we look to the histories that those Buddha's disciples, and when this Mahayana teachings going on, then many lay practitioners are involved. Then those not just involved, but those many lay practitioners also taking very big role in their the journey, such as a Vimalakirti, we know. Oh, he is playing very big role. And then Manjushri, Avalokiteshvara. These persons are the main characters who playing the role in the Mahayana teaching, like Vajrapani and Bodhisattva Vajrapani and so on, right? So within those, there's a both follower, lay, monk, male, female, regardless. It is more accessible for each and everyone. So like this, right now that what we are studying, like this Shantideva, way of Bodhisattva's life, it's also like that. It is open for everyone. It is more accessible than the other spiritual path. And anyone who have interested, can do it, this type of practice. So, so, so right now, what we are really trying to, what Shantideva was really trying to teach us is to contemplate upon these meanings and then to remove this sense of procrastination, sense of procrastinating upon our spiritual path. That's what, and then to remove that, and then these are the meaning he want us to contemplate. And then the next one, how can you remain at ease like this when you have done the deeds that lead to contact on your tender baby flesh of boiling liquid in the hells of extreme heat? So it's not that difficult to understand, right? It is very simple introducing. It is all talking about that uh, what one's future life's going to be. If, this is all if, okay? If one's life spent whole in a mundane and worldly way, as I mentioned above. This is not talking to the everyone, okay? The person who practicing this, trying to generate bodhicitta and try to implement these four immeasurable and six pranchana paramitas, they have some way, they have their own way to skip these kind of things. It is for sure, as Shantideva mentioned in the first chapter, the potential or the power of just having this aspiration bodhicitta within oneself, generating bodhicitta within oneself, how much it has its potential and power, right? Let me read those things. This is something in a first chapter. We studied this all many times. So now this is the time that we need to uh, contemplate upon those meanings. These meanings are so great, actually, starting from stanza 6, the first chapter of stanza 6, right? that virtue thus is weak and always evil or is of great and overwhelming strength. Except for perfect bodhicitta, what others virtue is there that can lay it low? And then further, for many eons deeply pondering, the mighty sage saw its benefit, whereby unnumbered multitudes are brought with ease to supreme joy. Those who wish to crush the many sorrow of existence, those who wish to quell the pain of living beings, those who wish to have an experience of Marriott's joy, should never turn away from bodhicitta. And so on. This is all, first chapter, it's all talking about its potential and its benefit, right? So here, look, the person who is trying to implementing these guidelines, which I just recite those three stanzas, and further there's many stanzas describing about the potential benefit. Yes, the person who always trying to engage into this kind of practice and try to have this altruistic, and then try to have this uh, the concerns about well-being, their priority, their priority. Fantastic. Then Shantideva, these things not talking to those type of persons. Okay, Shantideva talking all these things to on the other type of persons who just spending their whole life in a mundane and worldly, as I mentioned earlier. And then, yes, so the person who is trying to engage into those guidelines, that bodhicitta, and also further, like four immeasurable meditations and practice, and six prajna paramita, and excellent. Then this all Shantideva talking all this impermanent or uncertainty and procedure of death, and then the future life, what will going to be happen. It is all purpose is to you or to us to understand that we should not procrastinate on our those spiritual path. You understand? You got it? Hmm. If one not procrastinating those spiritual path, then yes, this purpose is done. If look at oneself now, if one procrastinating in our own spiritual path, then to remove that procrastination, sense of procrastination, then these are the remedies, these are the guideline that how Shantideva provided. And there's a many other guideline too, not only this one. There's a many different guidelines, many different methods, many different way of thinking upon uncertainty that Shantideva here provided some of the way to contemplate on uncertainty, how to contemplate upon uncertainty and to remove this sense of procrastinations. Okay? So, 추전진의 레바나 쉔셔전라라서 냐와이니 레시네 지치르다 데와네스. So, yeah, this kind of now, how can you remain at ease like this when you have done the deeds that lead to contact on your tender baby flesh of boiling liquid in the hell of extreme heat? Who will going to be those type of beings? Those will going to be who never practice this bodhicitta, who never practice these all spirituals. And then next one, so tasty and thin-skinned, you want result without I don't know why this at the beginning, so tasty and thin-skinned. Means? See, sensitive. Okay, so testy and thin-skinned. You want result without endeavor. Actually, here in Tibetan, we will say "Tsunme Debu Devadang." "Tsunme Debu Devadang" means that want result without endeavor or without diligence, right? Without diligence. Mm. And many are the troubles now in store for you. Okay, so now they translated in this way. So many are the trouble now in store for you who are short tempered or offended easily. That I think they translated testy and thin skin. I see. So here, I don't know, again, this translation I feel a little bit lost because in Tibetan, what here we're describing is that Tsunme Debu Devadam, one who looking fruition without endeavor. And then the person, those type of persons who are short temper, offended, often easily, short temper, the testy, what do you call it? So testy and thin skin. Another way, right? Another word, another way of describing short temper. Is it? Okay. Or offend easily. So the person who are short temper and offend easily, and those will going to get more harm. And then chiwe sungshin tadawas. And then on the other hand, the though in the grief of death, you are behaving like a god, and suffering, alas, will beat you down. So what does it now mean? So now this all we need to look within ourselves, whether oneself is willing to accomplish those results without putting much effort. If that the case, what Shantideva was saying, no, it is not possible. And then likewise, being so short-tempered and offend easily and not willing to get harm from others. And no, it is not going to possible. And then, what do you say? Though in a grief of death, you are behaving like a god, which is very unwise. What does it mean here, behaving like a god? Which means thus God, okay, this is now something related with the long history, right? God are normally kind of like they lost themselves experiencing the pleasant and pleasure of all this materials and five senses and so on. They have over facilities to spoiled being. Right now, what Shantideva was really saying is that even though oneself in the grief of death, still trying to engage into this mundane and trying to, how to say, try to, what do you call it? Get all those pleasant. It is, you are just behaving exactly no different than God. And what is going to be consequences if oneself behave like God, then suffering, alas, will definitely beat you down. So that's God. Now, this is God, his story. So gods are just lost by their all pleasant and facilities, and then they spend their whole life enjoying in these five senses and everything. And then when they death, oh, then highly likely they will fall down, even not really to the uh, demigods and animals. They just fall down direct to the hell. So this is something now Shantideva's, what it is really trying to telling us is that without removing this sense of procrastinations and without practicing this spiritual, such as a patient, not practicing patient means short temper and offend easily, right? And then not understanding the consequences of uh, kind of like a one's own deed. And then it's still just, even though we are grieved by death, but it's still trying to enjoying while we are alive with the blindly, with the careless way. Then our behave, it's really becomes the behave of God. What happens if we behave like God? Then this is saying, and suffering, alas, will beat you down. It is kind of like a guaranteed, like a definite. That's what they were saying. So therefore, uh, we must kind of like he is trying to let us contemplate upon all these meanings to uh, eliminate the sense of procrastinations. Mm, Anyhow, so now all these meanings are not difficult to understand now. What we need is we need to try to meditate, just sit quietly on one's bed and then contemplate and think carefully and imagine all this to oneself. We need to meditate. Without meditation, then when we little bit read these books or someone when they described, it gives little sense, it gives little feeling, and then immediately it will going to fade away. So in order not to fade away, we just don't merely listen and read and then walk away. We need to meditate upon its meaning. Then these meditations will give us the deep sense which never going to fade easily. Then which helps, triggers this memory again and again when we get lost by human pleasant, when we completely kind of like the observing in mundane activity, right? When we completely absorb our mind into the mundane activity, and this kind of meditations, when we have this kind of like the understanding all this above idea, it triggers to make oneself aware. Oh, no, even though it is pleasant, I should not get lost. I should not get lost. So I should think this all uncertainties. And then I should not procrastinate my own practice, regardless what kind of enjoyment I am having right now, what kind of pleasure I'm experiencing right now. But I should not procrastinate my this priority. That sense definitely gives by meditating upon these meanings. Okay, Just merely listen and read this book and then close book up there, and then you just completely go with the friends and hang out here and there, completely observe with the mundane world, then this doesn't triggers your this all memory of uh, kind of like a certaintiness on uncertainty, firmness on uncertainty. And when you don't have that kind of sense, firmness on uncertainty, then it doesn't help anything to remove or skip those procrastinations. You just completely absorbed and lost oneself into those mundane pleasure. And if we do, then all the above, whatever Shantideva mentioned, the consequences, there's no way we can avoid. So, in order not to fade anyway, so in order not to fade, we must meditate upon these meanings. That's more important. Uh, then, through our meditations, whatever we gain the firmness on this uncertainty, and then through this firmness, what we really need to, uh, how to say, mm, have wisdom is that even at the moment while we are alive, that the mm, it helps us to not prolong or delay engage into this kind of activity of engaging into four immeasurable six prajna paramitas, that I should not procrastinate or delay this kind of practice. That will bring by that firmness. That through that firmness, this kind of sense will bring up within oneself that it is not right for me to prolong or procrastinate engaging into all this my spiritual path. That kind of sense we will definitely going to have it. That is kind of like a fruition. That is kind of like a result of meditating upon this impermanent. Okay, this is something we should try to achieve it through this uh, study, and after a study, meditate upon its meaning. After meditating upon its meaning, what we really need to uh, have a deep in our mind sense, regardless whether oneself able to engage at the moment 100%ly or not, but in deep mind that we will definitely going to have that, oh, I should not procrastinate all this my spiritual practice. That when one have that sense within oneself, that really helps to eliminate that the first type of laziness, the procrastinations. And then further, when we do more meditations, when it developed further, then these procrastinations will completely remove. Then we achieve 100% its fruition. Even though we are unable to achieve 100% its fruition, but still it is very worth to even to have that sense within oneself, even though one may not be able to practice at the moment completely. Mm. And then now the raising question, are we really able to do this practice? Then Shantideva was saying, oh yes, we are. We are at the moment very able to do this practice. Why? Because we achieve this precious human rebirth. Therefore, Shantideva was saying, me to la tenes dunga chuo chile drol, to the chinanye kawe momba tisuni malos, which is this 14th stanza. So take advantage of this human boat. Free yourself from sorrow's mighty stream. This vessel will be later hard to find. The time that you have now, you fool, is not for sleep. So if you raise questions, am I really going to be able to achieve all those spiritual paths? And then Shantideva was saying, yes, definitely. You have all this capability and potential at this moment while you're having this precious boat, human boat. So this is the moment, free yourself from the sorrow, mighty stream. Like the sorrowness of any kind of things, actually. As above in the beneficial of Bodhicitta, how I mentioned. So anyway, so in short now, until here, what Shantideva was mainly trying to telling is to not procrastinate our spiritual journey for any purpose, regardless, no matter what. One should never procrastinate journey on our own spiritual path. Okay, so today maybe I'll stop here. And next week we don't have Bodhicaryāvatāra, both Saturday, Sunday. And then later we may going to upgrade. So you may watch our website, so you will get all informations. Thank you. And now we dedicate the merit. Sanam de tamje zigba ni tamne nye benda nam pamje ne shega nanje walon to bayi siben zolen do ando warasho jambal pawe jidara kemba dong kundu sambu de an de jende de da kunje jesu ndalo chi Gewan de dan tamje rabdu ngo, gewan de she oken, sanam yeshe tsozo ne, sanam yeshe le jongwe, tamba kunyin tobar sho, sanje kusum, shelo, chenye menjur, dembe shenlan dan, gendun meje, dembe shenlan je, jedara ngowa mel, Read in English. By this beneficial activity, may I obtain omniscience, and having vanquished the harmful enemies, greed, delusion, may I liberate all being tossed about helplessly by the waves of birth, aging, illness, and death in the ocean of becoming, by conforming to the knowledge of courageous Manjushri, Jambal Yang, and in the same way as Samindabhatara, Kundusambo, and following their example, I dedicate perfectly all this virtue. By this virtue, may all being perfectly achieve the accumulation of merit, sonam, and wisdom, yeshe, and may they thereafter obtain the two holy bodies which result from this two accumulation by the blessing of the Buddha, Sanjay, who obtained the three bodies, by the blessing of the immutable truth of the Dharmata, Chunyi, by the blessing of the infallible aspiration of the Sangha, Gendin, may this prayer of dedications be accomplished just as it is. Thank you so much. So have a good day. Take a rest. now we need to go.